Hey guys, I want to show you something really epic in Borderlands 3 that's just now kind of been discovered. It's a grenade that's been in the game since day one, and it seemed pretty weak at the beginning, and I don't think it's got a lot of popularity. It certainly isn't as popular as like the hex grenades or the pipe bomb that's now been nerfed, but this thing is, in my opinion, way more powerful than both of those, and hopefully they won't nerf this. This thing is absolutely insane. My guess is that a lot of people don't use this grenade. When you initially get it and get to use it and experience it, it doesn't seem to be that great. And there's definitely a reason why. If you use this in a very specific way, you can one-shot kill bosses. Right here, I threw one grenade and General Trant is dead. And this is also on Mayhem Mode 4. This is definitely one of the tougher bosses being on Mayhem Mode 4. He has a ton of health, and you saw how fast that health bar went down. It was like in a split second. And right here you can see, yeah, I did that on Mayhem Mode 4, and the modifications in the lobby are not helping or hurting the grenade. The grenade is just extremely powerful on its own, and if it can one-shot General Trant, then definitely it one-shots Captain Trant as well. It just takes one grenade thrown specifically in the right way. I'll show you guys how to do that, and you will evaporate bosses. You can one-shot these guys, and then you can just absolutely destroy some of the bigger vault bosses as well, and I'll show you guys all of that. Right here, I'm showing you that I did it on Mayhem Mode 4 as well. Also, this is really easy. You just walk in, you gotta know where to aim, and then you'll be able to one-shot them. And I want to give a huge shout out to Chadley99. I believe he is the one that discovered the secret ability of this grenade. The grenade I'm talking about is the legendary Red Queen. It's a Vladoff grenade, and if you guys ever used it, you probably again thought it wasn't that great, but it does have a secret ability, and you can see that the damage here is 7,476. But if you use the grenade in a specific way that I'm going to show you, then you can do millions and millions of damage. There's not a whole lot of other information about this grenade. It is a Vladoff. There is a red text that says off with their heads, and I think a lot of people think this is a reference to the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland because that's the line that she does say in that movie. So it could be referencing that, and it could also be referencing the first Resident Evil movie in 2002. There's a scene where there's a laser going down the hallway cutting everybody in half, and that's exactly how this grenade performs. In addition to that, in the Resident Evil movies, there is a character called the Red Queen. She is a computer system that is highly advanced and self-aware. If you guys have seen the movie, then this will definitely make sense that, yeah, this could be referencing that. The one that I have is a level 57. That's the highest level that you can get right now, and I did get multiple of these with all different kinds of anointments that I'll show you guys. The one I used is this one here. It says on grenade thrown, weapon, grenade, and action skill damage are increased by 25% for 6 seconds. Here are some of the other ones that I picked up, and these are all anointed, and the majority of them say that on action skill end, you're going to gain 50% bonus damage of some kind of element, whether it's incendiary, corrosive, cryo, or radiation, and that's going to last with your weapons for 10 seconds. One of the best ones you can get is on action skill start, you're going to regenerate one grenade, and that's going to be great for, say, a loadout with flak that's using the rack attack. Next, I'll show you guys where to get this grenade and then how it actually works, the skill tree and loadout that I'm using to get very high damage rating, and then I'll show you guys how awesome it is against like Grave Ward and Troy. So you need to head to Desolation's Edge, and then you want to take the fast travel location that is the drop pod that's going to put you closer to where this boss is, and this boss is called Blinding Banshee. This is a legendary hunt crew challenge, and once you get near this area, there is a new U station that you can trigger so that you can keep restarting and farming this guy. Here's what the Blinding Banshee looks like right here. I didn't test to see the frequency of the drop for the Red Queen, but this is the one that is designated to drop it. So now I'll show you guys how this thing works and the magic that it holds. So when you first throw the grenade, it's going to be one grenade, but it's going to split into two, and it's going to be linked with a red laser beam. The grenades will drop to the ground and bounce, and then when they reach their furthest point, they're going to both explode. I think upon first usage, most people are going to think that you want to have the enemy squared up between those two grenades, and you want to slice them in half with that laser beam, and that seems logical, but that's not actually how you want to use it. The way you want to use it, where you can do a ton of damage, is probably maybe not the way they intended, but if you manage to attach that right grenade to an enemy, it will stick to that enemy and not explode, and instead it will create a tether. If you don't stick that right grenade to an enemy, it's just gonna run off, go past them, and explode like you see here. And for some reason, it needs to be the right grenade that attaches to the enemy, and the left grenade that you can see here on the ground will stay on the ground and create a tethered laser beam to the enemy and will continuously deal damage. There's also one other really important thing to know about the mechanic of this grenade. I'll show you guys that a little bit later on. I've got some footage that explains it really well. This tethered laser beam doesn't last forever, but it lasts a pretty long time, long enough to take out most enemies and one-shot these big bosses. I would say that it lasts several seconds. I haven't counted, but it seemed like it was around at least 10 seconds or more, and you can have multiple tethered laser beams going at the same time. At one point, I had 4 on one enemy. Now I'll show you guys how you can set up your skill tree and your loadout so that you're dealing a ton of damage. Here's a quick glimpse of how much damage I was dealing to Troy. I absolutely melted him and also bypassed his immunity stages. I had a few grenades tethered to him, and you can see the 1 millions going off above him with the critical hits, and it was just doing 1 million over and over again, just feeding damage to him. This was also on Mayhem Mode 4, and yes, you can absolutely wreck him with this grenade. Before I show you guys the skill tree and the setup for this grenade so you can deal a ton of damage with it, I want to show you guys that one mechanic I was talking about. You need to understand this part of the grenade, that way you're able to do a lot of damage and then understand the types of enemies you can go up against with this grenade. So first off, you want to be aiming in a way where the right grenade is going to be hitting the enemy. So that means you're going to have to look a little bit to the left. And you also want to try to land that right grenade on the enemy's critical spot. Right here with General Trant, his critical spot is the tank on his back. I was able to land the right grenade on that tank as long as I was looking to his left and down a little bit, like chest level. So when he was looking at me, I would aim for his right elbow, and that seemed to work really well. And with a little bit of practice, you'll understand how far you need to stand from the enemy and where to aim. You'll be able to compensate to make sure that the right grenade lands where you want it to. I didn't just walk in and murder General Trant and Captain Trant. It took me several tries to understand how far do I need to stand from them, what's the drop on this grenade, where do I need to aim, and once I figured that out, I was just one-shotting them every time. So aiming and getting the grenade to land right, yeah, that's going to take a little bit of practice, but the most important thing to know is how this grenade actually damages the enemies and how to make it be more efficient. So right here, I had just thrown the right grenade. It did land on his tank, and it started to deal damage and take his blue shield down. But then all of a sudden, he stepped away from where he was originally standing, and the damage stopped. And the reason why that is because wherever that right grenade lands and hits that enemy, it doesn't actually attach to the enemy. Right here you can see the arrow, and I'm pointing to where the grenade landed when it hit his tank. And he moved to the right, and I've circled his tank right there. The damage stopped because he moved away from where that grenade made contact with his tank. So wherever that right grenade hits, it stays there in that position, and if the enemy moves away, it doesn't go with it. But if the enemy moves back into that area where that grenade made contact and is stuck now in the air, it will continue to deal damage. So right here, he's going to move back into the area where the grenade initially made contact, and you can see that yes, it is now continuing to deal damage again, and it completely destroys him. So basically, you're creating a tethered, stationary, damaging force field wherever that right grenade lands, and it will just hover and float wherever it hits first. So this is great for enemies that don't move around a lot, or you can predict their movements and location, and it's great for these enemies here where you can just melt them before they even get a chance to take a step. So now I'll show you guys the setup that I'm using with loadout and skill tree, where I was dealing millions and millions of damage. To maximize the damage, you can use the critical hit damage from weapons. So with the Unforgiven Jacob's pistol, you can have plus 300 to 400% critical hit damage as one of the modifications. The one I have is a plus 432% critical hit damage, so this is the one I'm using. It is a level 57. This pistol can be farmed on Floodmore Basin on the planet Eden 6. There is a rare boss spawn called Endotyrant. It's a giant T-Rex. With the introduction of DLC 2, they've added another Jacob's legendary pistol that also does a ton of critical hit damage. It's called the Love Drill, and you get this from the final boss. Then to help support the critical hit damage from the weapon, I added on this class mod here. It's a stack bot. This one I got from DLC 1, Moxie's Heist. This one is just perfect for this setup. It does weapon critical damage and Jacob's weapon critical damage of 72% combined. At a level 57, these are the percentages that you can expect, and this one gives me plus 6 grenade capacity. I definitely don't need it for most of the bosses, but it helps out if you're just trying to kill only with the Red Queen. Then for artifact, it's not really critical what you put on. You can put on whatever you want. I found one that had a plus 31% grenade damage. I'm using flak, and this is the skill tree I have set up here. I have everything in the red and green tree, nothing in the blue. I put all points towards gun damage and critical hit damage, and then right here on the left you can see the Megavore. That's the last one on the hunter tree. It says flak gains a chance to score a critical hit with weapons against any part of enemies, and it's a 20% chance when you have that selected. So if you're tossing grenades at an enemy trying to hit that critical spot, then 1 out of 5 is going to be critical no matter where you hit, and it's probably going to absolutely destroy. When you're up against an enemy and you're throwing the red queens, you got to make sure that you're holding out the Jacob's pistol that has that major boost with critical hit damage. I'll show you guys a comparison of what it's like to be holding out the pistol and then not holding out the pistol. So on the left, I am holding out the pistol. I've got all that critical hit damage plus the class mod that's feeding more critical hit damage to that pistol. And you can see I'm doing multiple millions of damage. Then on the right, I am not holding out the Jacob's pistol, and I'm doing a quarter of that damage at 239,000. Without the Jacob's pistol and that boost in critical hit damage, you can still do pretty well with the Red Queen alone. It's just going to take you a little bit more time and a few more grenades. But if you want to do 4 times the amount of damage, then yeah, go ahead and hold out the Jacob's pistol. But again, the Red Queen on its own is super OP. So now I'll show you guys some gameplay and how I use the grenade to melt some of these big vault bosses, and I was really surprised to see how well it worked on Grave Ward. I saw this method on CHIHUAHUA's video, and I didn't think I was going to be able to come in here and kill Grave Ward with these red queens alone, but I did. The method I did was I stood back up against the wall all the way to the right, so when the platform tilts, you don't fall off and you don't have to run to try to stay on it, and you avoid the elemental corrosive balls that are coming at you. Then you can move forward and get into position. He's going to slam his left fist down. You can throw the red queens at that yellow orb. You'll be able to do a ton of damage to him right there. I was doing multiple millions as long as I was hitting him with the right grenade. Then I went to the left side of his head and I tried to get that right grenade to land in that critical spot on his forehead or face, whatever that is, and I was able to kill him there, which again was very surprising. And this was on Mayhem mode 4, so he's at his strongest. And when I looked at the modifications in the lobby, it said minus 25% critical hit damage, so I was at a detriment and I still wrecked him. So I wanted to go in and see if I could kill other bosses just as fast. So I went in and tried Troy, and it took me a few tries to figure out his mechanics, his movement, how I could get these grenades to work. And yeah, you can melt him pretty easily. So again, understanding the boss's movement, I know that he drops in the center immediately, so I was ready to go with the first grenade to land on his forehead, and it took out his first segment and immediately put him into that immunity stage. Now at this point, he might fly up to where the vault door is and hover, and you gotta shoot these targets to bring him back. But I noticed that if I just kept spamming him with the grenades and trying to land them on where he was standing, then I took advantage of that very split second when he becomes unimmune before he flies over to the vault door, where I can hit him hard with those grenades and it will just take off those segments and put him into the next immunity stage. And it worked because the grenades were already dealing damage, waiting for him to become unimmune and vulnerable, and it immediately took all his health down and killed him pretty fast. If he did not go into immunity stages, I think I could kill him with 2 grenades minimal, which shows you how crazy powerful this setup really is. And there was one game where I bypassed his immunity stage. I did so much damage to him that he couldn't go into immunity and just died. Here's the game right here. I was still trying to figure out his mechanics, and it works so good on him because he always returns to the center. And if you've set up those tethered grenades and that stationary damage zone, then eventually he's going to fly back into it and he will be taking damage from the ones that have been stuck there. Right here, I was just spamming grenades and had 3 tethers to the center of that arena that was dealing a bunch of damage. And I'm about to die here, so I'm just trying to get away, and I don't really know what's going on behind me, but he returns to the center of the arena where that massive damage zone is, and he should have right there gone into immunity with that little little bit of health that he lost, but because there was so much damage being dealt, it bypassed that immunity and killed him very rapidly. And this is something I've been trying to figure out since the beginning of the game. How can we bypass these immunity stages? So we're getting a little bit of an idea of how to do that. I just need to do more testing and work with it some more to see, you know, what do we need for timing and placement to make that happen. Again, this was on Mayhem Mode 4 with Troy, and I haven't tried Tyrene or some of the other bosses. There's been so much time already put into this. I want to go try the DLC bosses and see how far we can take this. But we have Mayhem 2.0 coming up, and we're going to be dealing with some serious enemies there. I feel like this grenade, this kind of setup is something that I will be taking in and I know will work really well. Also, real quick before I go, this works really well on basic enemies too. This is Mayhem Mode 4. These are some tougher basic enemies, non-bosses, and as long as you hit them with the right grenade, then you will vaporize them. As far as the other three characters, I know Mose has a good grenade build. I don't play the other characters, so I'm assuming because most of this power is coming from the equipment itself, I think the skill trees can be set up to support it and it shouldn't be a problem. But hopefully this will help you guys out, and we'll see you next video.